Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Health official YouTube channel, I hold Night School, where I break down the most interesting conversations, the most controversial topics, the most urgent debates going on in the world today. And tonight is no different. Although you might notice I have on today my Philly stuff. I just drove down to Philadelphia from on a long road trip to handle some business, and it was interesting and exciting to be there because there's an election coming up in 6 days, and people had wrapped up their early voting. They were talking about the election. They were talking about what they were going to do. And the energy was palpable. And there were a lot of opinions. You know, when you drive in Philadelphia, you see strong Kamala. When you go to certain counties outside of Philadelphia, you see strong Trump. When you go into campuses, you see strong Green Party. It was incredibly exciting to be part of the conversations today in the city. And now that I left the streets and went back in the house, it's time for Night School. And I am excited to have a guest who I've been trying to have on here for a long time. She runs an amazing YouTube channel. She is a well-respected and exciting, and I would say even fresh voice in the these media streets. And I'm excited to have her here on Night School. Sabrina Salvati, better known as Sappy Sab. It's good to see you here on Night School. Welcome.
Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for having me on.
I am, again, I'm excited. And for those that don't know, and I feel like more people watch your show than mine. In fact, I know that's true. So a lot of my people already know you. The comments are filled with people saying, welcome. We're so glad she's here. People have been texting me all day saying, I can't wait to see you guys talk. So again, it's great to see you here. We'll get right to it. You're at a moment like the rest of us where we're observing this bizarre election cycle. How are you making sense of what's going on?
This has been a crazy year, Mark. I think that at the beginning of the year, I told people that 2024 was going to be wild, but I didn't imagine this wild. Okay. Yeah. I had a feeling that Joe Biden was going to drop out of the race at some point. I thought that would happen sooner, but obviously, it happened later than I thought that it would. But from what I'm hearing from people on the ground, most people have told me that they're not going to vote. Just a reality. Most people have said they're not participating. That doesn't surprise me. But those that are participating, I'm hearing a lot of the same thing from people. And I'm in Massachusetts just to give people an idea of where people's heads are. It is very weird this year that I am seeing a number of Trump signs. And I don't mean Trump signs in someone's yard. If I'm driving on the interstate, there are a couple of overpasses that you'll see. There are people with Trump flags, waving his flags on the overpass. I didn't see this in 2016. I didn't see it in 2020. And again, this is Massachusetts. We're blue, for the most part, right? For whatever reason, people, I guess they feel a little bit more comfortable openly being a Trump supporter in Massachusetts this time around compared to 2020 and 2016. So I'm seeing that. I'm also seeing a lot of support for Kamala Harris, especially among women here in Massachusetts. Like I said, it's a blue state. It's probably going to go to Kamala. Don't believe people that are telling you that, oh, Massachusetts may be red. It's not going to be red. We have red pockets.
Red.
Yeah, we have red pockets, but you know how it is. It's going to be blue. But I'm also hearing from people that they're just not happy with either candidate. A lot of people are saying they can't believe Trump is running again. They're tired of Trump. And I've also heard people say that they're not really feeling Kamala either. So it just goes to show you there's a lot of people that are just not happy with the choices.
Yeah, I mean, and for good reason. I mean, we have two choices that I think are as undesirable as I could have imagined, even for the Democrats and the Republicans. I mean, I had no doubt that Trump would run a third time. My only question was whether or not the criminal legal system would hem him up so much that either he couldn't complete the run or that the voters would say no. But from where I sit, Trump supporters don't care what he does. So I didn't imagine that would be a confident, that wasn't a confident horse to bet on. And then with Kamala Harris, I don't feel any more or less comfortable with her politics than Joe Biden's. And it's pretty much mainstream, middle of the road Democrat politics. So there's no surprises there. but at a moment where there was so much possibility for a radical vision or even a progressive vision, hell, maybe even a liberal vision, to see none of that on the table has been really disappointing. What would you have liked to see happen at the moment that Joe Biden steps down?
Well, number one, I prefer to open primary. I would have liked to see, I don't even remember, but there were a number of candidates that were challenging Joe Biden earlier on. RFK Jr. was in the Democratic Party at one point. He was running as a Democrat before he decided to run as independent. There was Marianne Williamson. There was Dean Phillips. Cenk Uygur was running again. And not saying that those are my choices, but I would have preferred to see an open primary, which of course the DNC did not want. And also corporate media didn't want an open primary. They were very vocal about that early on. And they said that Joe Biden is our candidate. Then Joe Biden drops out and basically just passes the torch to Kamala Harris and says, I endorse her. Kamala Harris did not participate in the 2024 Democratic primary. And this is a big problem for some people, not everyone. But the fact that she was just selected as the nominee, that's not democratic. So for the party that is telling everyone about democracy, that's not real democracy. I didn't think that that was fair. So what I would have liked to have seen is someone come forward and have the correct position on Israel and Gaza. Besides just we need a ceasefire, they're not working towards a ceasefire. Someone who is willing to withhold arms from Israel, someone that is willing to push back against AIPAC that would not take corporate money. So I come from the Bernie Sanders movement. I still stand by not taking corporate money. I still stand by Medicare for all, someone who was going to be a true left candidate. And I would prefer that they run outside of the two-party system, because what we've seen is that squad members and other, quote unquote, progressives have not been able to get any type of gains in the Democratic Party because the Democrat leadership has been shutting them down when they have tried to. And also in some instances, they did not try, to be honest. But that's what I would have liked to have seen. And I think some people thought they may get that with Kamala when she selected Tim Walz, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
Would it be too far to say from your position that she's not a legitimate nominee? Because I hear that a lot, that literally this was an anti-democratic process. Now, there's an argument to be made that she was already on the ticket and presidents bow out, constitutionally they bow out and vice presidents take the spot. I think that's a tougher argument when you haven't been nominated already. You're just a candidate like everyone else. I'm not sure any of the names that you mentioned would have beaten her. In fact, I'm sure they would not have. And those who could have beaten her, say a Gavin Newsom, wasn't going to run. So I think as a practical matter, she probably would have become the nominee. But I think people would have felt a lot better about that process if they could, I don't know, vote. That seems like a fair thing to ask. So is it too far to say she's not a legitimate nominee?
That's what I've been saying to my viewers, because it's really not fair. And I think that if there would have been an open primary debate, maybe some people would feel differently, right? I feel like we don't really know how it would have played out because it didn't happen. Then there's the issue of her being a part of the current administration. So she already had a strike against her. This is something I was asking my audience. Was Kamala Harris set up to fail? And I asked that question because she's a part of the current administration. The reality is some of the same criticisms that people had about Biden's policies are going to apply to Kamala Harris as well. So that's just the reality.
To me, that sets her up to win, because she can do the Shaggy defense. It wasn't me, right? Like anything that we don't like about Biden, she can say, yeah, the president, I disagreed on that. When I'm president, I'll do this other thing. But
she didn't do that. She went on to The View and she said, I was in the room with these decisions. So she was a part of those decisions. She made that very clear to everybody. And she also said she wouldn't have done anything different than Joe Biden. So that one of the biggest mistakes I think Kamala has made, she has not separated herself from Joe Biden. So I think, and I don't know how many times people have had to tell her this. You have to separate yourself from Joe Biden. She's not doing that. So there's that. And also, it would have been different if Joe Biden had chosen to resign. So let's pretend that Joe Biden said, I'm dropping out of this race and I'm also going to resign. Then Kamala Harris would be the president. So it would have been different then. and then she's entering the race. But Joe Biden did not resign.
Right. And I think we're saying the same thing. I'm saying I don't think she was set up to fail. I think she was set up, or i.e. positioned to be quite successful. I don't think the setup was the problem. I think it was her execution. Instead of saying, yeah, we need a ceasefire, or yeah, we need a weapons embargo, or yeah, fracking. She, like you said, she echoed everything that Biden said. She could have said, I was in the room but disagreed. She's like, I'm in the room and I agree with this. That to me is where she went wrong. But I think the problem is she does agree. She isn't different. But there's a way that people wanted to believe, at least in the opening weeks of her run, that she was this considerably more, measurably more, demonstrably more progressive candidate than Joe Biden. And I'm not sure that's true. I'm not even sure Joe Biden, from where I sit, Obama was less progressive than Biden in certain ways. Biden was the one behind the scenes pushing Obama. Kamala seems to be in the same vein as all of them, and none of them are progressive candidates. They're all DLC, old school centrist Democrats to me. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, they're not progressive at all. I mean, if you look at her campaign from 2020, which, by the way, I did see Kamala Harris speak in person in New Hampshire in 2020 when she first announced that she was running. There was a lot of energy behind her in the beginning. For people who are not aware, the line was wrapped around and around and around all these different blocks in New Hampshire. So she had a lot of momentum in the beginning. And during that campaign, I remember in the beginning, she agreed with Medicare for all. She also wanted to ban fracking. She ran to the left on those policies at that point in time. And then when she received I think a lot of pushback from corporate media, are you going to remove people's health care? Then all of a sudden she changed her position on Medicare for all. As we've seen as time has gone by, she changed her position on fracking. And it just kind of seems like Kamala Harris is this candidate that she thinks people want her to be. So whatever she thinks you want to hear, that's kind of where she's going to go. And I think there are some voters that are looking for people that are going to be more principled when it comes to the issues. And that's one of the reasons why I support Jill Stein, because she's been consistent. And not only has she been consistent, but she is calling for arms embargo. She is calling for a ceasefire. She's been consistent on this issue with Israel and Gaza. She's been consistent about the police state, criticizing the police state. She has a Black agenda that's part of her platform, which includes reparations. Like, she really is the left candidate.
There's no doubt about that. Jill Stein is the only person on the ballot. And that's not true. She is the only person literally on the ballots who is a left-wing candidate. Cornel West is a left-wing candidate, but he's not on the ballots in almost every state. Claudia de la Cruz, I'd say the same thing for. Both of them, I admire them, love them. But if you're trying to vote for someone who could even mathematically win, you only have three choices right now. You have Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, and Jill Stein. And I want to talk to you a little bit about your logic and your calculus for how you decide, and how people are deciding where they're going to put their chips in this race. But we have a question coming in from the audience that I wanted to get to right away, because I think it flows with our conversation. That's from Bullet the Bunny. She said, Savvy, thank you for joining Night School. Would you both care to share your individual takes about how VP Harris's race and sex have been characterized and used this election cycle? I think that's an interesting question, and one that I think has only been taken up superficially in mainstream media. That's why people like you are so important. Talk to me about race, sex, and how it's been used to, how it's influenced this election.
I think the Democratic Party and corporate media decided to run with identity politics, right? Instead of focusing on who is Kamala Harris politically, what are her policies, what's her platform. Part of that could have been because there wasn't a platform for a while, to be honest. But I think that's a mistake. And I don't know why they choose to do this strategy. She's a woman. She's a Black woman. She's Black. She's Indian. I don't care. Voters like me, I don't care what your ethnicity, that doesn't determine if I'm going to vote for you. I'm not voting for you based on your race. I'm not voting for you based on your gender. And I think what the Democratic Party may not realize is that when they lead with that, it gives a way for legitimate criticism that this candidate may be an empty suit. This candidate, maybe they don't have a lot of policies, or maybe they don't really have a mission or an agenda to focus on that. And there is a lot of focus on that. Guys, she could be the first woman. I saw this with Hillary Clinton's campaign. I saw it with Barack Obama's campaign. He could be the first Black president, and I just think we need to move past that as a society. I think we need to focus on their record. I think we need to focus on their platform and what are they going to do for the American people and also marginalized people in this country.
Is there any value, particularly in, say, 2020, in a Joe Biden choosing Kamala Harris, not because we just want to sort of assign our sort of political aspirations to the selection, i.e., I'm Black, he picked a Black person, he must really like Black people, which I think I agree with you is sophomoric, and history just shows it doesn't matter, it doesn't help, right? But I think Joe Biden, when he chose Kamala Harris, was trying to gesture to Black voters that he would take a Black agenda seriously, and that he hadn't and that he didn't take lightly the fact that his election only happened because of Black women in the South. And so his commitment to choosing a Black woman vice president and a Black woman Supreme Court justice wasn't just a performative gesture, but an actual way of showing voters that he cared about these issues vis-a-vis this risk he's taking. Choosing a Black person is always a greater risk in a room full in a white supremacist society. And so he's saying, look, this is like my down payment on an actual policy. Now, I'm not saying Joe Biden had a great policy for Black people. I'm just saying I'm just thinking about different political logics that might have been playing out besides just we're going to put on a show here. She
wasn't his first choice. Joe Biden wanted Amy Klobuchar, and I don't think she's great either.
Which is a terrible choice. I didn't understand that one at all. I still don't get that one, even now, in retrospect.
Yeah, I don't think she's great either, but he was pushed to select Kamala Harris. So that's one thing. She wasn't his number one choice. And I think we need to take a deeper look about what representation actually means. I mean, we had representation with Barack Obama. What did he do for the Black community, right? We're talking about Black wealth tanking under his presidency. We're talking about him going to Flint, Michigan and pretending to drink dirty water in front of a room of Black people, militarizing the police in Ferguson. What did he do, right?
Well, he didn't mobilize the police in Ferguson per se, but he certainly didn't offer any critique of the militarization of Ferguson, to be sure. And there was an opportunity to use his bully pulpit to change the outcomes on the ground. Just want to be clear.
Well, you know what I mean. But
yeah, I don't want anybody to
I think that it's a shame that people are falling for this again. And now there's Kamala Harris. And now people are saying, oh, she's going to help Black people. What has she been doing to help Black people? I mean, people need to take a good look at Kamala Harris' prosecutor record, right? So for me, a lot of people point to me and they'll say, oh, you're not supporting Kamala over Gaza. It's not just about Gaza. It's about her prosecutor record. It's about her bragging about being the top cop in California. And I am not pro law enforcement in any way, shape, or form. So when I look at Kamala Harris, I see someone who locked up a lot of Black men. I see someone who charged parents for truancy, went after these parents, and in a result of that, putting their kids through the school to prison pipeline. That's what I see when I look at Kamala Harris. So to me, it doesn't matter. I don't care that she went to HBCU. A lot of people do. White people go to HBCUs too. I don't care that she was an AKA. None of that means anything to me. I'm looking at what has she done to the Black community. One can point to Joe Biden and say similar things about his record with the Black community, his past. Joe Biden being friends with racists like Strom Thurmond. Joe Biden making comments that he doesn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle. Like all these types of things that I think I really do wish as a community we would pay more attention to what is done and not just what someone looks like or what school they went to.
Let's go there. I'm glad you said that, and I don't disagree with any of that. I think that the superficial politics identity politics in particular, are an easy sort of lure for particularly our communities. I'm talking about Black people. We're encouraged to vote Democrat because they care about us. And if it's a Black person running, it's seen as a kind of a sign of fidelity to the race to vote for a Black person, even if that Black person is operating against one's interest. I remember in 2008 when I strongly supported Cynthia McKinney and Rosa Clemente, and in 2012 when I didn't vote for Obama for the second time, there was a bizarre criticism that I received that I was a race traitor. And it's like, no, I'm not voting for Barack Obama in the interest of Black people, right? I'm not choosing. It's not like I chose John McCain. It's not like I chose Mitt Romney. I chose people who I thought would have a better, powerful, more compelling agenda for Black people, who would put us in a position to have better alternatives in the mainstream parties if we're going to go there. This time around, that sentiment is still pervasive, but there are also people who are saying something different. I'm thinking about, for example, Angela Davis, the legendary activist, scholar, who said she was asked in Paris last month who she was voting for. And she said, do I really have to answer that question? I'm certainly not voting for the person leading the Republican Party. And then she went further, though, because she certainly didn't want to dismiss the Green Party and other parties, like our friend, my friend Cornel West, and Claudia de la Cruz. Of course, she ran for president in the Communist Party in the 80s. Angela Davis has been a Green Party member for a long time. She and I both have been Green Party members for a long time. So I want to be very clear when I lay that out, that she's not coming out of nowhere with this. But what she said was, when we engage, she said, the point of winning is not to put people into office only because of their race or their gender. She said, when we engage in electoral politics, it can't be just because a particular individual is running for office. She said, it is to enlarge the terrain of mass struggle, to guarantee a space for the trade union movement to win victories, for the women's movement to win victories, for people of color to win victories, for working and poor people to win victories. That's why we urge people to vote, isn't it? She's saying this in France for context. Now, her argument was something that seems to resonate with everything you said, except Angela Davis ends up saying, I'm voting for Kamala Harris. Angela Davis says, and I'm not, this isn't an appeal to authority, like what Angela Davis said. I'm just giving you a perspective here, because I want us to think through sort of the way different people who are undoubtedly radical, undoubtedly leftists are thinking about this. She said, it's not just about electing Kamala Harris. It's about opening space for those of us who are more radical than Kamala Harris to put anti-capitalist and anti-racist programs forward and increase the pressure of change, especially in the first place when it comes to the genocide being inflicted on the people of Palestine. So she said, I'm still a communist, I'm still all these things, but I am voting for Kamala Harris, not because I believe in Kamala Harris, she says, but because basically I want to pick my opponent. I want to pick my enemy. And we have a wider terrain of struggle with her as president than with Donald Trump as president. What do you make of that argument?
I think that Angela Davis is going along with the status quo. And I understand that she was a former Black Panther, but I think this is a class issue. And I think this is something that we do need to talk about when it comes to the Democratic Party. It is very clear to me, it seems like people that are of a certain class, regardless of race, they tend to be okay with the status quo. You know, let's elect Kamala Harris and try to push her left, right? How did that work out for the squad members and Joe Biden, right? Like, how did that? It's just When I think about the Black Panther Party and what they fought for, the Black Panthers knew that the US government was not going to help their people. So the Black Panthers started to help their people themselves. So they started mutual aid. They built clinics, the free breakfast program. That's where that comes from. Because they knew they weren't getting the help that they needed from the US government. And I feel like what Angela Davis should be doing is empowering people to organize and mobilize within their communities instead of saying, I'm just going to vote for Kamala Harris and that'll open up a space. Because it doesn't really open up a space. That space is open to people based on class and status and certain networks. That's the reality there. Those that are not taking donations from corporations, from the military industrial complex, are often shut out of those spaces. Cori Bush will tell people about that. Jamal Bowman will tell people about that. So this idea of just have everybody under this big tent and everything will work out okay in the Democratic Party, that has already been proven by Justice Democrats that that strategy does not work. So Angela Davis, to me, has been a big disappointment over the years. And I do feel like some of the radicalism that she used to have in the past is no longer the same.
I mean, and that's I think the critique that's coming down from folk who are holding this line. Angela Davis actually wasn't a Black Panther Party member, but she certainly embraced a kind of radical politics that certainly had a critique of political economy, certainly had a critique of capitalism. And your point in saying this is a kind of bourgeois position to take, that, hey, let's vote Democrat and let's hang in there, is a really interesting one. What do you make, though, of the claim, not just from Angela? I don't want to make this like you criticize Angela Davis. That's not what I'm going for. Don't worry, there's not going to be a clip of like Savvy Savage, owns Angela Davis. That's not what it's. I know some people do social media that way or YouTube that way. I think that's terrible. But other people, again, she talked about the victories. As bad as this Biden presidency has been, there have been some victories, at least in the context of liberal politics, that would not have happened under Trump. Conversely, there are some failures that happened or some awful things that happened under Trump that may not have happened. Just for example, the Supreme Court rulings, the loss of affirmative action during the Biden administration, but with the conservative Supreme Court, Roe v. Wade, things that would not have happened if a Democratic president had been there to elect even a liberal Supreme Court justice. Changing the structure of the court is a long-term battle that could take decades now. The Chevron decision, we could go on down a million things. What about are those things worth fighting for? And if they are, how high do they rank on the list of urgency as opposed to getting these corporate Democrats out of here? Which they're all urgent, but how do you sort of stack those things?
The money is more important. As long as we have corporate money that are controlling these politicians, they're not really going to give us any really significant policy that is going to impact our lives. We don't have Medicare for all because there's so many politicians that are taking money from Blue Cross Blue Shield and Aetna. Right. So there's reasons why we don't have these things. Even when we look at the climate bill that passed under Biden, remember, there was corporate interest that was attached to that. That was why Joe Manchin agreed to vote for it. So if we want something done for the people, we have to remove big money interest from electoral politics. We need to have free public elections in this country. So there needs to be a big push towards that, because as long as the money is there, nothing is going to change. People have to really understand that. They'll do a little bit for us that they can get by with. But once they are there, they are not working for us. They are working for their corporate donors. They are working for the military industrial complex. And I will say this is something that I think Bernie Sanders really woke me up to. I'll give him credit for that. I'm not happy with Bernie today, but I'll give him credit.
You feel like Bernie sold out?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Bernie had a movement of thousands. I remember going to a Bernie rally and there were so many people there. I didn't find out how many people were there until I got home and I saw the coverage on the news. thousands and thousands of people there. And I'm talking about people that were independents, people that were Democrats, people that were non-voters, all coming together because of his economic agenda. And the worst thing that Bernie Sanders did was to hand that base over to Hillary Clinton, over to Joe Biden, instead of taking that energy and building a third party movement. That was a really big missed opportunity that Bernie Sanders had there. But at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders caved to Democrat establishments, and he's not even a member of the Democratic Party. So a lot of these politicians, they want to have a political career, even if they tell you they don't. They want to have that. They don't want to deal with the negative backlash that they're going to receive from certain circles in DC. And if you guys have ever been to DC, if you ever lived there, it is very much government. Almost everyone I know that lives in DC works for the government in some way, shape, or form. Right. So it's that type of dynamic. And I think one of the things he did do, though, is he woke me up to money in politics. And I pay heavy attention to that. He had me tracking everybody who's getting money from this corporation, who's getting money from that corporation. And it made me realize that this is why they don't do anything for us. This government is giving $3.8 billion a year to Israel. They're giving billions to Ukraine. Zelensky can walk in and just walk out with a check, just like that. But they don't want to give everybody health care. These are things people really have to pay attention to. It's not that they can't, it's that they won't. So when they say, how are you going to pay for that? Push back on them and ask them, how are you paying for giving money to Ukraine? How are you giving money to Israel? In Israel, everybody has health care. So they are looking out for other countries' interests instead of looking out for us. We got to talk about the fact that the homelessness rate has increased in this country, continues to increase. Not everyone that's homeless is on drugs. Some people that are homeless have been evicted. I know, I've met them, I've talked to them. And I think that when we organize within our communities, which I do, I am an organizer and I do mutual aid. This is how I know what is happening. Having your ear to the ground, the working class, and also poor. Because these politicians love to bring up the middle class. What middle class is left in this country? We need to talk about people that are poor, people that are lower income. And there are several of them here in the Boston area.
Let's talk about the middle class. Anybody who makes, $40,000 to $20 billion, they're all middle class.
This is poor and low income people. And they have no way out, Mark, no way out. People who are working 2 jobs just to put food on the table. The grocery prices are ridiculous. And that's even coming from me. I notice the difference when I go to the grocery store. It's been like this for quite a while. This is ridiculous. People who have to choose between, am I going to pay this medical bill or am I going to keep the lights on? Am I going to pay to get my car fixed so I can go to work, or am I going to keep the lights on? That is very much a reality for a lot of people that live in this country. And the politicians have continued to look over these people. If you fall in that bracket where you make too little to receive any type of government assistance, but you don't make enough to really take care of yourself, you're screwed in this country.
Let's talk a little bit about that. And I don't disagree with the critique of Bernie Sanders. I probably have a more generous interpretation of some people's behavior, and that is, I don't think everyone's selling out. Sometimes I think people are just wrong, and I try to give people at least the space to be wrong, right, as opposed to assuming bad intentions or poor character or something otherwise mendacious. There are people who just believe that that capitalism can work. There are people who just believe that, another world isn't possible. And because of either the limited vision or the lack of hope or a kind of almost like just a kind of cynicism or even just pragmatism, they end up accepting the status quo as the only way out. So someone like Bernie Sanders, I don't know Bernie well enough to know whether he's selling out or whether he just is giving up. I'm not sure if the difference matters for voters or for people on the ground, but it does shift in terms of how we think about the next steps of our movement. Like, do we need to find people with better character, or do we need to convince people through political education that this capitalism thing ain't ever going to work for us? Not for the bulk of it. And that's a rhetorical. I mean, I'd love to know your thoughts on that at some point, but for me, it's always that struggle of figuring out where people are. I've seen people keep sending me videos of you. I haven't watched them. I'll be honest with you. I watched your show, but I'm talking about a particular video. I think it's you critiquing me. I saw the critique through Twitter. People would say, she's critiquing you vis-a-vis Kamala, but I watched a little bit of your review of the Candace thing, but it was a lot of Candace in there, and I just couldn't watch that again. And I said, I'm going to ask her directly. What was your critique of me? What was the issue? I didn't follow it even from people.
You seemed really hyper. Like, I don't know what was happening there. I was just like, why is Marc like, you were defending Kamala Harris. It was the conversation that you had with Candace Owens on Piers Morgan's show.
Yeah,
and
Candace. Yeah.
Yeah. And you just seem very hyper and wanting to defend Kamala. It felt over the top to me. And so I was just kind of like, what is going on with Marc?
Which part felt over the top?
Huh?
Which part felt over the top?
Your debate between Candace about whether or not Kamala Harris was Black, and Candace was talking about how Kamala is changing her accent depending on who she's around. And you got really energized there. And you were just kind of like, no, stop. She is Black. It was just kind of, I don't know.
So you're talking about my actual, but I thought you were saying that the argument itself, I thought you were saying I was making a particular argument or claim that was over the top. You're saying you just thought I was too exuberant in my defense of her.
You seem pretty hyper. I thought to myself, maybe Marc had a lot of caffeine. I don't know what was happening that day, but I've talked about that as well. I haven't talked about it as much as Candace has. Candace has done a whole investigation into Kamala Harris's background. What I will say, and what I've explained to people on my show, is that when people say that Kamala Harris is not Black, what they're saying is that she's not an American descendant of slavery. That is the message that people are trying to get across. It's not because she's biracial and all this type of stuff. That's not what that's about. That's what people
disagree with. That. So just for context, and people here know because they were with me the night before. I did do a lot of caffeine and stuff because I'd been in the hospital the night before. My son had been hospitalized that night, and so my audience knew because I was there with them. And I said, "Hey, I can't do the show tonight. I'm at the hospital." I ended up doing the show that next day, the same day I did Piers. And they sent a truck for me. Piers sent a truck for me to do the interview in the truck. And so I did charge up so that I could do the interview. And the interview was not supposed to be about Kamala Harris or anything else. So I was also sort of, my agitation wasn't that somebody was attacking Kamala Harris. It was that I was being sort of ambushed with a series of topics that had nothing to do with what I was told I was coming to talk about Diddy. I was told that I was coming to talk about Diddy, and then 5 minutes before they said we're adding another topic, and I said, "What's that topic?" They said reparations, which, if you watch, we never got to. Right. So to suddenly have these, and no one told me Lord Jamar was showing up at all. It would be like if right now you popped up and suddenly I said, Sabrina, you're going to tell me LeBron or Jordan right now, and then I just bring in like Dwayne Wade, and now suddenly you're having this debate about basketball that you may know everything about, but you just didn't come on to talk about it. And then all three of us are kind of ganging up. And I think the other thing for me, my frustration with, and again, I was agitated for lots of reasons that had nothing to do with them, but it was also that Candace is allowed to give full answers and every sentence gets interrupted. I couldn't get a thought out. And so it's like a dog pilot thing that I find frustrating. It's just not the way I do TV, and I don't do TV anymore. For that reason. It's not that I don't get invitations. I mean, some places I don't, but there's lots of TV I don't do because I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy that part of it. But I think I do have a particular irritation. On top of that, I do have a particular irritation with the Kamala Blackness debate. I disagree with you. There are people who say she's not a descendant of slavery, but that's not what a lot of these people are saying. Even Candace, that's not what Candace is saying. Candace is saying she's literally not Black. They're saying that she's Irish and Indian. There are people
that comes from her dad. Her dad wrote an essay for people who are not aware. Her father wrote an essay that said that he is Jamaican and Irish descent. So that's where a lot of that started for Candace, was that essay that was written by her father. So there's that. And just to be clear, so people understand, you can be Jamaican and not be of African descent.
That's my
right?
point. And that's
Yeah.
what they're saying is her. So they're not just, that's what I'm saying. They're not saying that she's just not ADOS or FBA. They're not just saying she's not a descendant of slavery, but they're not saying she's like a black person. They're not saying she's Harry Belafonte, right? They're saying your mama ain't black, she's Indian, and your daddy is Jamaican, but he's not a black Jamaican. He's not an Afro-descendant Jamaican. He's Jamaican through India and Ireland and all these other places. And so therefore, you're not black at all. You're just pretending to be black and then putting on the kind of cover of blackness through Howard, through AKA, through all these other things that I know you talked about. I watched that part of your video. And I think for me, that's a problematic debate for lots of reasons. One, I don't think that that's true. I think she actually does have African ancestry, direct African ancestry through her Jamaican side. But also it reinforces that.
But you said you think. You don't really know.
I mean, I don't know yours either, right? I don't. How would we know other than what she tells us? She tells us she does, and she's given us her genealogy. So why would I?
Where's Donald? Where is Donald J. Harris, Mark? We need to ask this question. Where is Donald?
I think that's a great question. But if you remember, when people were asking for Obama's long form birth certificate, they were also asking for his brother and parents, and they saw and pointed to their absence as evidence that Obama was lying about his ancestry when in fact he wasn't. So I don't assume because someone's not around, because there's lots of reasons why you don't. Trust me, if I were president, you would not meet some of my family members, and it ain't because I'm lying about them being my family. It's for good reasons not to. So I don't assume that that's the thing. Again, I'm okay with people saying we want to know more, but people are claiming definitively that she's not. And even I saw on your Twitter pointing to her conversation with Shannon Sharp, where she talked about the kind of fictive family members as almost evidence that she was co-signing now, that she was conceding that she wasn't black, and that wasn't what she was saying at all.
Well, I think one of the points that I want to bring up is the issue with the grandmother, right? So this is something that Candace did talk about. Apparently did a lot of her research, and it's true. Like in Black communities, sometimes we'll call someone, auntie or, uncle or cousin that is not actually our cousin or our aunt. But I think what Candace was pointing out, to put that in your book and the picture and say, this is my grandma, it does give people pause if they already have question about your ethnicity, right? And
why do we think it wasn't her grandma? I mean, just for clarity's sake, why do we think that it wasn't her grandma?
Because according to the research that was done, what they were able to prove, at least on her show, is that woman, that woman's name, that person passed away in the 60s.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But what I want to say also is this. Some of this is on Kamala Harris too, Mark, because for a long time, Kamala Harris allowed for people to call her first Indian. And I think people forget this. Like when she was running for the Senate, I played this video on my show multiple times. When she was running for the Senate, a reporter said to her, so if you win, you will be the first Indian female senator. And she said, yes. She didn't correct him and say Indian and Jamaican. And that was the case for quite some time. So part of that is on her too. And for anybody, who comes from me or whatever, I have biracial members in my family as well. They don't do that. So I think some of that is on her as well. Yeah, it does give people the impression, today I want to be Indian, today I'm going to be black. Like, yes, it will give people that impression.
Yeah, so I know you're a serious person who does investigation. The claims that Candace Owens has made about the woman in the book being dead before she was born have been debunked. There's no evidence that what Candace did was she did a sort of sleight of hand, assuming or getting us to believe that the woman that she did the research on did a name change, and that name changed woman was the woman who died. But if you actually follow the genealogy and do the research yourself, you'll see that nothing she said has been contradicted by that, by the book or by her family tree. It's just not true. And I'm not sure. I guess I wonder why you find Candace Owens is such a credible source for this kind of thing.
Well, first of all, I have a lot of criticism for Candace Owens.
But why do you find her credible on this?
Yeah, number one. But what I wanted to say is that I think it was an audience member who sent it to me, who told me about it. And I, again, not someone I usually watch, but I watched it just to see. I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. But I think I was interested because some of us had questions. Some of us had questions. And it just is what it is. And so to your point, if Candace is wrong about that issue with the grandmother, fine, it is what it is. That doesn't take away from Kamala Harris her fault in some of this. That doesn't take away from all of a sudden one day you're Indian American. And then this is the thing that people, they push back on Donald Trump for, but I actually agreed with that when he said, all of a sudden, one day she woke up and she was black, because you were allowing people to tell you that you would be the first Indian female senator. You didn't correct them.
Was she not? I mean, well, first, on the point, I don't want to stay here too long because, again, I think like you, her blackness isn't the reason why you should or shouldn't vote for.
No, it's not. But none of this would have been an issue if the Democratic Party didn't run on her identity. None of this would have been an issue if they would have just not mention the whole, she could be first black this, first leave that alone and just focus on the policy and focus on the record. Yeah, this would have never been an issue.
I don't have an issue with that, but I also, at this point, it becomes a character issue, right? If she's pretending to be black or making up grandmothers or making up aunts, that would be deeply troublesome, right? And I think there's a million reasons not to vote for Kamala Harris. I just don't think this is one of them. And the reason why I got frustrated is because I don't think, in the same way that I got frustrated with Lord Jamar calling her the B word, it's like, there's room to criticize Kamala Harris without calling her that. There's room to criticize Kamala Harris without saying she's not qualified to run a Dunkin' Donuts. Is there an argument about qualification that could be made about any of these people? Sure. But he's not using the same measuring stick. He's saying Donald Trump's qualified and she's not. And I'm saying by that measuring stick, that's where it becomes problematic to me. And I will defend her. But I think it's unfair to characterize that as a kind of defense of her candidacy rather than a defense of Black women who are being, or whoever, and depending on what the argument is, who are being assailed. For example, if Mayor Pete were running, and I hate Mayor Pete's policy agenda, right? I hated it just like I hated Kamala's. But if people started throwing around homophobic slurs, I would say, hey, wait a minute. That ain't why you shouldn't vote for him, right? If people, I didn't vote for Obama, but if someone used the N-word and said that nigga's unqualified, I'd say, chill, right? And I'd go after them, and I still wouldn't vote for him, right? So I never told my audience that they shouldn't vote for her because of her ethnicity. No. What I'm responding to the idea or the curiosity around my vigorous defense of her on these matters. I'm saying no one's heard me defend her on policy. I'm only defending her on what I think are unfair attacks, because those unfair attacks don't just stop at her. But I would also just, as a matter of just facticity, I would say, yeah, she didn't just, because you said Donald Trump's right on this. Donald Trump's not right. I don't believe. She didn't just start calling herself Black when she ran for office. She was the president of the Black Law Student Association and in law school. That's why? And I understand that, but why didn't she make the correction? If a reporter is standing in front of me and a reporter says, "Oh, you could be the first," and I know that's not true, I am going to make that correction. And I think there's also something else. That's a different point.
So that's on her.
No.
That's on her.
I'm disputing something else. You're saying that she did not begin identifying as Black until she ran for office, and I'm saying that's factually untrue. I'm saying
when she was running for senator, before she was running for president in 2020, when she was running for senator, that's what I was referring to. That conversation.
I'm saying that's not the first time that she identified as Black. She identified as Black in college, in law school, as an attorney general, and there's evidence of this.
What I'm saying is she didn't at that moment when she was talking to the reporter. She did not.
Right.
He said to her face, "You'll be the first Indian American woman," and she said yes. She did not correct him.
I think we're talking about you said that Donald Trump is right. Donald Trump didn't say what you're saying now. Donald Trump said that Kamala Harris never identified as a Black person until she ran for Senate. And what I'm saying is Kamala Harris did identify as a Black person before she ran for Senate. If I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying at the moment that she ran for Senate, she allowed someone to frame her as an Indian. That's a different argument.
For me, that was the first time I heard of her.
Right, but that doesn't mean, right, but Donald Trump's not saying what you just said. Donald Trump was saying that in her life she identified as an Indian until she decided to run for president or Senate, excuse me. And I'm saying, I'm willing to engage your argument fully. But what I'm saying is, I don't think it's a good idea to say that you're echoing Trump, because Trump's not saying that. He's saying something that's completely untrue and baseless. Now, your point, I think, is an interesting one, right? Which is, you're saying that she allowed someone to call her she is an Indian American. Now, she could have said Indian and Black. And I do think that there's something cynical about being identified as Indian. I don't disagree with you about that. I'm just saying, I don't want to, but we shouldn't then usher in a whole other narrative that's not true. Let's just attack her for being cynical.
I think the thing is this, Mark. For those of us that are American descendants of slavery in this country, okay, and I'm not a part of, for people come for me, I'm not a part I'm not a part of the ADOS organization, although I agree with some of their positions, and I'm not a part of, actually, FBA is not an organization. I don't know if people realize that, but it's not an organization, right? So I just want to make that very clear. But for those of us that are American descendants of slavery, there has been this type of push for whether it's in the political space, whether it's in the media space, for them to tell us who is us. And so the pushback that you're seeing from people, the pushback that came with, I think Obama always said he was, from what I remember, I think Obama always said that he was Kenyan and white, whatever. So I don't know if people come.
He's Black. He's just not African American. Yeah.
So I think for some of us in that particular group, it is kind of frustrating sometimes when they do point to someone like a Kamala Harris and say, this is this Black woman, this Black woman, and it kind of erases our struggle in this country. That's where the pushback comes from. And this is not, and again, whatever ethnicity, I don't care what Kamala Harris is, what she is, that doesn't determine whether or not I'm going to vote for someone. But I also think at the point, there is deep concern within the ADOS community in this country about people being put into positions that quote unquote represent us that are actually not us. And there does need to be a discussion about that. And I will say that.
That I agree with wholeheartedly. I think that it's not a coincidence that the two people who have the potential to be the first two Black presidents of the United States are neither of them are descendants of slavery. And contrary to what people say on the internet, I'm a descendant of slavery as well. For some reason that becomes a contested conversation, and and I don't know why, but it becomes like, he's not ADOS either. And it's not that.
Can I just make this point really quick as well? The reason why that is important. We have a different struggle. We had a different struggle in this country. And when I hear Kamala Harris say, her mom, worked and saved and she grew up middle class, I think it's important that people understand when you're coming to this country, particularly, especially if you're coming here to study. I was an academic advisor, so I'm very well aware of how this works. When you're coming to this country to study in the PhD program, and from what I understand, from what I read about Kamala Harris's mother, she came from a higher caste system in India. That means you had money to get here. You are already a step ahead of a lot of us that are American descendants of slavery in this country. You are already a step ahead of us. And we should not be erased. And this is what people have to understand. Our struggle is a different struggle. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, my great-great-grandparents come from the Carolinas. My family came from chattel slavery. That is a different struggle that we had to go through in this country to try to even gain some type of success, to try to even establish some type of generational wealth, which most of us do not have. That is different. So when people say she's just like you, no, she's not. Her struggle is different.
Agreed. And I would tell anyone who says she's just like us that she's not. I think, though, there are people who have your argument, and there are people who have a more cynical and devious plan, and then there are people who are, there are all these different positions, and they're all getting molded together. And so she ain't Black means so many things to so many people, from conspiracy theory to just, she doesn't come from slavery. But let's move to Gaza, because I think that's one of the big, not just talking points. I mean, it's maybe the most urgent issue for many people in terms of the decision to vote or not vote, or to vote for one candidate versus another candidate. And I say that because there are a lot of people who say, I can't vote for genocide. I ain't vote for none of these people, right? None of these corporate candidates. How does the Gaza issue, the Gaza genocide, shape how you think about Kamala Harris and how you think about the election more broadly?
I personally cannot support a candidate that supports the state of Israel. The images that I have seen come out of Gaza since last year, I can't unsee what I saw. And what is insane to me is that there are a number of people who are talking about protecting children and talking about family values. Meanwhile, in Gaza right now, they're not even allowing food and aid to get in again. I have seen children's bodies dangling. I have seen children missing arms, bodies torn in half. I will never unsee that. Yeah. And for me, any politician who stands there and supports the state of Israel, which is an apartheid genocidal state, I could never get behind. And if you're taking money from the Israeli lobby, you're already going to do the bidding of Israel, regardless of whatever rhetoric that you're saying right now on the campaign trail. But I could never support a candidate that backs the state of Israel. Cannot do that.
That is, I think, a position. I don't know how to say it. I think it's a principled position. I think it is a reasonable position. I wouldn't challenge anyone on that position. I would never tell anyone not to take that position. I think initially people were telling Palestinians, all right, y'all got it. If you're Palestinian, I'm gonna let you live with that position. Anybody else, be pragmatic. And I think as the genocide has grown, not just in scale, but in public awareness about it, more and more people are saying, I can't in good conscience make this choice. How does this thing end in your mind as a practical matter, right? How do we get to an end to the genocide? And I'm stipulating that I don't believe that any of these candidates that can win have any interest in stopping this. I don't think Kamala Harris, I don't think Kamala Harris wants a genocide. Yeah, if there's a difference between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden to me, is I think Joe Biden is an ardent Zionist who honestly doesn't give a shit about this. I think Kamala Harris is a cynical politician who may really actually be sad that the genocide is happening, but not sad enough to risk her presidency or her campaign or her. So at the ethical and moral level, I don't see them as any different. And again, any distinction is without a difference to me. So at the end of the day, I don't think Biden, Harris, Trump, any of these people are willing to stop this genocide. They wouldn't cross the street to stop a genocide. So how do we get to an end?
Well, you have to, number one, call it a genocide. Kamala Harris said she doesn't believe it's a genocide. So that right there lets you know everything, right? Regardless of what Netanyahu has said publicly and all the videos that we've seen come out of Israel with the rhetoric from the Likud party. So there's that. How do you end it? You're going to have to do an arms embargo. You cannot continue to give Israel the weapons. They're using it's mostly our weapons that are being used to kill kids in Gaza, also Lebanon. I mean, let's be real. We got to bring in the West Bank in this as well. They're kicking Palestinian people out of their homes. This is insane. It's the weapons. And then, Mark, that goes back to money and politics. This is why I say it all leads back to the money. As long as these weapon contractors have a hold on politicians, as long as they are a part of the Raytheon lobby or the Lockheed Martin's the big one. They're a part of those lobbies. That's not going to change. This is why I continue to say you have to get the money out, because as long as the money is there, they're not going to listen to you. They don't have to. They're going to continue to give Israel weapons. They're going to continue to wage war across the world. Why do you guys think they continue to have all these different interventions in other countries, coups in Venezuela, displacing people, ruining people's economy? Look at Haiti, look at Venezuela, you can see what has happened. So until you get corporate money out of electoral politics, this is not going to change. Kamala, I think at her best, will probably continue to say, we're working tirelessly for a ceasefire. Do I see Kamala withholding weapons? Absolutely not. And she even told you that she would not.
Do you see Trump doing it?
No. And that's another thing that pisses me off, Mark. Last night I talked about that endorsement that came from the Muslim mayor in Dearborn Heights.
Oh, I went off. I went off.
That makes no sense. What are you doing? Why? I don't understand what is happening. I really don't get it. But the reality is Trump is pro-Israel, and so is Kamala Harris. I don't know why they think that Donald Trump would withhold You got me fired up now.
No, I had the same issue when all the Muslim leaders came out on Saturday and stood, not all the Muslim leaders, I mean all the ones I'm talking about on the stage. There's like 7 or 8 of them stood up in Michigan and said Donald Trump's our person. He'll bring peace to the Middle East. It's like he's never been president before, as if there's no track record of Donald Trump being the opposite. But this goes to the question that a lot of people are asking, and one that I frankly struggle with. I'm still struggling with it, which is none of these people are going to bring peace in the Middle East. There is no pathway to ending the genocide through voting, right? If I vote for Trump, I don't get it. If I vote for Kamala, I don't get it. If I vote my conscience, I don't get it. Right? I get to say that I didn't endorse genocide, but you still end up with one of those two people who get genocide. So there's an argument that you can make the moral choice, right? And sleep at good night with a good conscience. There are other people who make the case, as Angela Davis did, as Mehdi Hassan made right here on my show last week, and others make, that at the end of the day, they all are genociders. They're all, anyone who can win is a war criminal and a genocider. Every president in American history has been a genocider or a war criminal. So all you can do at this juncture in history is pick your opponent and fight. Is that not the case?
Let me ask you a question, Mark. If somebody killed your family, would you vote for them?
If someone killed my family, I would need more context.
If someone killed your family, would you vote for them?
Again, I would need more context. Like, do I have to vote?
If you had, regardless, if someone killed your family, would you vote for them? If that person was running, would you vote for them?
Again, I would need more context. I'm not trying to be argue. Let me tell you what I mean. If the choice was vote for them or not vote, I would not vote. If the choice were if I had to vote, or I felt compelled to vote, and it was vote for the person who killed my family or vote for the person who will kill more of my family, I might have to pick the person who killed my family. That's what I mean. It would depend on context.
So here's the problem. Number one, realistically, I don't think that you would vote for someone who killed your family. And that's the reality. For the people who are, blaming Muslim voters, who want to support Jill Stein or Claudia De La Cruz or Cornel West.
I'm sorry. I misunderstood people. I apologize. My question wasn't about Muslim and Palestinian voters. I'm talking about the public writ large.
Well, let me finish. Some of these people have lost entire lifelines in Gaza. Now, for me, I don't have family there. But as someone who is a Black American, there is no way. If you can stand and you stood up against apartheid South Africa, there is no way I can sit up here and endorse what has been happening in Gaza. Absolutely not. And I sure as hell won't reward a genocide either. Okay. So regardless if Trump or Kamala wins, the reality is I can sit here and I can say I am not giving support to the party that is committing the genocide abroad. And as a Black American, I think all of us should be able to look at that and see what's happening to the Palestinian people and think about what happens to us here in this country, what happened to us here in this country, and some of the things that are still happening to us in this country. When we talk about apartheid, we had a system of apartheid. When we talk about the class issue, we talk about criminal justice. Think about what happens to us in the criminal justice system. So there is no, would you still support? No. We are not supporting genocide, period. We are not rewarding it. If Kamala Harris loses, that is on her. They asked her for a ceasefire and an arms embargo. One would have to be very, have a large ego or just not really care to not even consider it. She's not even willing to consider it. One, to sit there and to discriminate against Palestinian Americans and tell them they can't come on the stage during the Democratic National Convention, but the Israeli families can come on the stage. I thought the Democratic Party doesn't do that. I thought the Democratic Party isn't about discrimination. I thought they say the Republicans only do that. We cannot sit back and support that. We cannot sit back and say this is okay. Palestinian people, Muslim voters in this country, the Democratic Party and these people are just basically pretending like they are third-class citizens and that what they want does not matter. This has happened to Black people too. So for me, I think that if you feel as though you got to vote for one of these two people because you feel like they are your hero, I am here to let you know that no politician is going to save you. Kamala isn't going to save you. Donald Trump isn't going to save you. We have to save each other. We do this by organizing and building community and mutual aid. And one of the things I have noticed from the Muslim community is that they are very well organized. And they got together and they said, we have demands. And I think other groups in this country need to do that too, especially for Black voters. We don't do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you. I think I'm agreeing with you. I think if on much of this, I think if Kamala Harris loses, it's not because people voted wrong. It's because she didn't earn their votes. I don't think any candidate is entitled to votes. And in this particular case, I think Kamala Harris was given a very clear opportunity to win. Again, I think she's put in a position of success, not one of failure. Voters in Michigan, voters in Pennsylvania, voters all over the country, particularly young people, brown people, Black people, radicals, progressives, all said, hey, Joe Biden is moving in the wrong direction on Gaza in particular. Kamala Harris had a fresh start and had an opportunity to listen to the young people who crashed that event in Michigan and not boo them off or not get them booed out of the building. She had an opportunity to say, hey, I'll at least consider a weapons embargo. She said no. She said no. She responded to the rumor of a potential embargo by saying, no, it's not going to happen. So I never, and I said this on Democracy Now! Earlier today, we're not going to blame Black men for this. We're not going to blame Muslims for this. We're not going to blame Palestinians for this. If Kamala Harris loses, it's because she took a policy course. She charted a policy direction that is not only unprincipled and morally indefensible, but not a winning strategy. And we already saw that with Biden. So to me, I agree with all of that. I think my question, though, if we begin from the place that they're all warmongers, I'm not thinking about what these candidates are owed. I'm trying to think through, and what I'm struggling with is more sort of what's tactically best, what's best for us, right? I don't think, remember I started by saying, I don't think any Palestinian should ever be asked to vote for Kamala Harris. I think, though, at the same time, if as a practical matter, voting against Kamala produces an outcome that we don't want, I now at least have to weigh the impact of that outcome versus the impact of this other outcome. So, for example, if you knew, since you asked me a hypothetical, if you knew more Palestinians would die in Gaza under Trump than under Kamala, would that shape your vote? Would that shape your voting choice?
No, I'm not supporting Kamala or Donald Trump.
No, I got you. So what I'm saying is that in that case, you'd be making a choice in that hypothetical, similar to the one you raised to me. In that choice, even if you knew your choice would lead to more death than not making that choice, so at some point, it's not just about the kind of abstract moral principle. There's also a practical consequence to our choices that we have to weigh. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying this.
I think that the framing needs to be changed. I don't believe that whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, I don't believe that the killing is going to stop under either president.
No, I get that. But that wasn't, but you just respectfully hear what I'm saying. I raised a hypothetical that if you knew that one did, for example, it's reasonable to say, although I don't think it matters that much in the grand scheme of things, it's reasonable to say that the rich are going to get a bigger tax cut under Trump than they are under Kamala. That's just a fact, right? Now, Kamala is so ensconced in neoliberal capitalism that that wouldn't make me vote for Kamala. I'm just saying that's just a fact, right? So if that was someone's big issue, or if abortion was someone's big issue, or if the Supreme Court was somebody's red line issue, then they may make a different choice than they otherwise would based on knowing that this outcome is going to go here and this outcome is going to go there. I think when it comes to Gaza, one of the challenges is, and I agree, neither person is going to be, they're both so awful on this issue that it's, I do think Trump is worse. And I do think more Palestinians will die under Trump than under Kamala. And Kamala and Gazans didn't sign up to sort of be part of our kind of. Their lives shouldn't be the ransom for this decision-making process. And again, that's not our fault. That's Netanyahu's fault. That's Israel's fault. That's the United States' fault. That's the world's fault that endorses Israel. I'm not putting this on the voters. I'm just saying, as people are struggling with this issue, and because there are a lot of people in my audience in particular, myself included, who are struggling with this issue. I think some of us are not less interested or less compassionate or less outraged about what's happening. We're also saying, which one of these what choice can I make that'll make fewer people die? And I don't know, and I think people are arriving at different answers to that. And I think that I'm just saying, I think that calculation is just as morally defensible as the person who says, I, even as an abstract idea, can never vote for genocide.
So I think part of the problem is, number one, it's been a year, right? It's been a whole year since this war, since the genocide started. It's been a year.
Yeah.
I think the difference is I don't believe that the total killed is going to be different depending on if it's Kamala or Donald Trump.
Why? Tell me why.
That's the thing, because Kamala is not going to withhold the weapons. So as long as you are still giving them the weapons, they're going to kill as many people as they want. They're not even letting food come in. This is how horrible this has been. They're not letting food and aid come into Gaza. And it's not just Gaza. Israel's attacking Lebanon. They're killing people in Lebanon. Like what? Israel is out of control. And so my point is,
but Israel's always out of control.
If they really wanted the hostages back, this would have already happened. I do not believe a ceasefire is going to happen under Kamala or Donald Trump. That's the thing.
But that's not. I'm not disputing that point. We're saying the same thing. I'm saying I agree. The debate isn't whether Kamala's good on this. I'm saying, why do you think that Trump? Unless you're arguing that this literally could not get any worse, I could name several things that Trump could do to make it even worse. And I'm saying, I don't share the premise that Trump could not be worse on this issue, because he could be. I could give you a couple of examples. He could send U.S. troops. He could send more weapons. He could not.
Biden already sent some troops.
Right. He could send. I said more. That's why I said more. Right. He could send more troops, not some more. So what I'm saying is, Trump could do worse. And the reason why this isn't just an abstract fear for me is that when Trump stood on that debate stage with Joe Biden, he said, I agree with everything that's happening. I want him to do it harder and fast. He said, I want them to finish the job. So Trump doesn't even pretend to use restraint. So again, Kamala is terrible on this. Biden is terrible on this. Obama was terrible. They're all terrible on this. But I would argue that Biden was that Trump was objectively worse than his predecessor on this. And so Trump has shown that even in a non genocide moment, he's still going to do things that other people won't. And I'm not just talking about Democrat, Republican. I'm saying,
but I don't think we should be arguing about the lesser evil genocide. Like, genocide is genocide.
But what would you say to the Palestinian who said the difference between 50,000 people dying and 100,000 people dying for me matters because those are my people?
It's more than 100,000 people that have died.
It's heavy. It's an arbitrary number. I know
right.
Exactly.
That's not going to. This is what I want people to understand. That's not going to change under Kamala Harris. If she's still giving Israel the weapons, they will continue to kill.
No. I'm not disagreeing with that. That's not what I just said. I'm saying, what do you say to the person who says, because you just said we shouldn't focus on like who's going to be slightly less better or slightly better or slightly worse with regard to the genocide. What I'm saying is, there are people who would say, and I know Palestinians who have said this, I've had this exact conversation with Palestinians on this show, including Nora Etiquette, who would say, who absolutely accepts that, that more Palestinians would die under Trump than under Kamala. I'm not saying that, to be clear, I'm not telling people to vote for Kamala. I'm simply saying.
But Nora Ericat was just on bad faith, and Nora Ericat also said she would not support Kamala.
I know that, and that's where I was going. That's where I'm going. So that's my point. We can accept a certain thing as a fact and still arrive at different choices. My argument here is not to say vote for Kamala. My point here is that I think that there is I disagree with the argument that everyone who's voting for Kamala is indifferent to genocide or doesn't care. Because I know Palestinians who say that, yeah, I know people who take your position that, yeah, if let's just say 5 people, right? I'm just picking just a number for example's sake, that if 5 people are dying under Kamala and 10 are dying under Trump, that's not, they're both killing people, and I'm not endorsing either. But I also know Palestinians who would say, yeah, but those extra 5 people matter to me because that's my family, that's my neighborhood, that's my community, those are my people. And I'm saying if they make that other choice, I'm not saying that they're morally wrong for that. That's all I'm saying. For me, and that's why it's a struggle for me, because I'm trying to weigh all of these things out. I've always sided for voting green, right? And said, you know what? They're all warmongers anyway. All these outcomes are shit. I need to build something for the future. I need to build an alternative. I need to build a plan. There are people, though, who have made compelling arguments that I'm listening to, that Trump is a little bit different. And that's what I want to ask you about. What do you make of the people who say, yeah, in general, that's fine, right? That they're all shit, vote green, vote communist, vote. But Trump posed the unique, historically relatively unprecedented threat that isn't like all the other Republican candidates. Mehdi Hassan said that on the show on Friday. A lot of people in my audience disagreed with him. I disagreed with him, but I want to get your take on that.
Well, Mehdi Hassan blocked me because I told him that we shouldn't reward genocide. So there you go. But I will say that, I think looking at the numbers is very telling. Donald Trump is ahead of Kamala Harris with Arab American voters. When you look at the swing state polls, the CARE poll that came out for Muslim voters, Jill Stein is ahead of Kamala Harris in 3 of the swing states with Muslim voters. In one of them, I believe it was Nevada, I have to go back and check, Donald Trump was ahead of her in one of these. I don't know what's happening there. I don't think people should support Donald Trump. He was the one who moved the embassy. So I think a lot of people forget this.
Yeah.
But what was that?
I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah.
What about that? Yeah. So I don't think people should support Donald Trump either. But apparently, from what I'm seeing with the numbers, it is very clear that the Arab American voters are supporting Donald Trump over Kamala Harris now. So I don't know.
I read something today also that showed that, which I thought was super interesting, that Jill Stein is actually pulling more Trump voters than Harris voters, which undermines the argument that voting Green Party somehow is ruining Kamala and an endorsement of Trump. That to me is an interesting argument. I see a question coming in for me. I just want to answer it really fast. Passionate Rebellion said the fallacy is that life for Palestinians will be better under Trump. What concrete evidence does Marc have for that? I'm not arguing that, Passionate Rebellion. I'm not arguing that life for Palestinians is better under Trump. I've never said anything to that. In fact, I think if anything, I said the opposite. In the last 15 minutes. If anything, I've made a case maybe that life might be marginally worse under Trump. And my reason for that is, Savvy just started talking about it, right? Moving the embassy, which to me isn't a quality life issue. That every Democratic president, Bill Clinton is the one who made the Jerusalem Embassy Act happen in 1994 or 6. And people have just signed waivers, and it's all Trump just didn't sign the waiver. Trump didn't bring this into fruition. He did what every U.S. politician does. They play games with Jerusalem. They play games with Israel. They placate the Israeli government and the Israeli public, and they cozy up to Zionism. So Trump is bad in that area, but he's again, like I said earlier, he's U.S. policy on steroids. He is intensified and sometimes worse, but not. He's not a whole different sort on that issue. But But I've watched Trump do things that no other president has done, whether it's allowed the Embassy Act to move, whether it's recognizing areas in the Golan Line which are illegally occupied, saying that they're Israeli. He cut UNRWA prior to October 7th. He cut UNRWA prior, to the false BS claims that came out after the ICJ decision. I mean, there's lots of things. Trump wants to give Netanyahu even more land, even more weapons, even more money. And while the Democrats have started to at least abstain on these UN Security Council votes, Trump is like, no, I'm going to have Netanyahu and his bromance forever. I'm going to veto. And so those kinds of things, I do think are substantively different and can ruin Palestinian lives even more. But again, I will never tell somebody that voting for Kamala Harris is a principled choice. I'm just not as quick to say to some people, I'm not talking about the neoliberal assholes who are just voting for Kamala because they want Black excellence. I'm talking about people who really want to organize outside of voting. There are people who just don't see voting as a referendum on their morality. They see it as a tactical move, and the organizing happens in the street. That genocide is not going to happen in this voting. It's not going to end in this voting booth anyway, and so I'm going to make different choices. And I'm saying I recognize that. This is something that came up, Sabbath, I wanted to get your take on. Kamala embraced the Cheney's rejected Palestinians. The first part of that is interesting to me. I remember when Jill Stein got endorsed by David Duke, and I'm like, and she rejected it and didn't announce it and all that. But people are like, look. And I'm like, what do you want her to do? Like, it's not her fault. But somehow they saw David Duke as a sign, as a referendum on the Green Party. But when Dick Cheney, who they hated all those years, of the warmonger and war criminal of all war criminals, endorsed Kamala, they were like, oh, look, she's a uniter. Like, if this monster votes for you, doesn't that say that maybe you got some monstrous policies?
Well, I think what is really interesting about that as well is that the David Duke incident. David Duke has done this a number of times before. I really do think he's an op. I really do.
And then he endorsed Tulsi Gabbard.
He also endorsed Charles Barron, and Charles Barron, Black Panther, was running against Hakeem Jeffries. And from what I understand, he was ahead in the polls in the beginning. Then the David Duke endorsement happened. And next thing you know, Hakeem Jeffries soars in the polls. And that's how Hakeem Jeffries got that seat. Interesting, huh?
It's interesting. I mean, David Duke is, I struggle with David. I don't struggle with David Duke. I'm irritated by David Duke. When I spoke out at the UN and got fired for CNN, David Duke said, I agree with Marc Lamont Hill, right? And so it's like, look, there's proof that Marc's wrong. He's like, no, it's not. If David Duke right now said climate change is real, that doesn't mean climate change isn't real. David Duke is a racist. He's a white supremacist. He's an anti-Semite. He's a piece of human garbage. And sometimes he says things that are correct, right? And even if it's for the wrong reason, his critiques of Israel might be bound up in anti-Semitism, but it doesn't mean that Israel doesn't deserve to be criticized. But the reason I'm bringing all this up is more to say, why is why are we seeing the right-wing war machine coming out in support of Kamala Harris?
They want to keep the wars going. So one of the wars that Donald Trump has said that he would end right away is the Ukraine war, right? You guys have heard him say this. He said that first week he would contact Zelensky and Putin to say, you guys need to make a deal. This has to be over. Weapon contractors don't like that. The MIC doesn't like that. They're not going to make money. You're not having wars. You're not going to make any money. So that could be a big part of it. Why they're coming out to support Kamala, because Kamala and Biden, they don't really want to end this war with you. They haven't mentioned that. Like, let's just get a deal, get it done. No, they're saying that Putin must be stopped. So this war could go on for who knows how long. So there's that. And I think that's why they're coming out to support Kamala Harris. It's terrible. And it's not even just that, Mark. Dick Cheney, when you talk about who he was as a person, Dick Cheney was against Head Start programs. I don't know if everyone's aware of that. He was against Martin Luther King Day. Like, this is not a good dude. He actually did not support Nelson Mandela being freed. He was against that too.
I think he's against kittens. I think he's against kittens and babies too. I mean, he just anything reasonably defensible, something that would be intuitively defensible, he's just like, nah, hated it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I guess that's why, because somebody's like, why are you bringing up the David Duke? I'm not bringing up the David Duke thing to drag the Green Party. Again, I'm a Green Party member, and I'm defending the Green Party. I'm saying the David Duke shit is stupid to me. My point is to show the hypocrisy of the Democrats, right? They're saying if a bad person endorses you, it means you're bad. And I'm saying, well, if by that logic, y'all got some explaining to do about why Kamala Harris is getting defended by not just Lynn Cheney, but Dick Cheney. And I suspect George W. Bush as well. These are the principal architects of an illegal Iraq war, of the Patriot Act, of all of these other things. So I'm just saying Democrats have some explaining to do, or let's stop with the stupid thing of you are what you are endorsed by, which again is just a facile, immature, unsophisticated argument that allows for the thing that Savvy's talking about, which is now evil people can just endorse people they don't like so that they get dirt all over them. Right now, maybe I'll start endorsing, since I'm hated by all these people. Maybe I'll start endorsing Republican candidates just so they look bad. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm gonna just start saying, yeah, I like Bob over there. Bob's awesome. When this election is over, and it will be over, win, lose, or draw, somebody's gonna win, somebody's gonna lose. What do we do next?
So I keep telling people, guys, you have to organize locally. This is something we can do, organizing locally. You have to organize within your community. And please, please, please pay attention to the ballot measures. I know a number of people told me that they're not going to vote and they live in a ballot initiative state. I don't understand that. If you don't want to vote for the president, you at least need to show up and vote for those ballot measures. There's a number of items that are on the ballot that are about abortion. Ranked choice voting is on the ballot in a number of states. So organizing locally, I include ballot initiatives with that as well. I also think that people really need to do community building. So one of the things that I do is mutual aid. So we host events for those that are in need. We just did a back to school event actually at the beginning of the fall for the students. So we gave them book bags and all their school supplies that they needed as well. That type of building is really important. And also when you do mutual aid, I will say this, you actually get to see what you're doing help people directly.
Yes.
It's different when you vote. You're voting for a politician and you hope that that politician is going to represent you and vote for legislation that you agree with, but you don't know for sure. Right. So that politician is kind of like the middleman. Yeah. But when you do mutual aid, that's different. You see it pay off for those individuals directly. And then with local organizing, like, please, please, please. There's a lot of focus on the presidential election, but I would love to see a number of people run for city council, school board, please. If you're not happy about what's happening at your child's school, run for school board. These are seats that are overlooked, I think, a lot of times. There are a number of seats in this country where they're just vacant. Nobody's running for anything, or run for mayor, those types of things. Get involved within your community. I don't know if this is happening in Philly, Marc, but definitely here in the Boston area, gentrification has definitely taken hold. And you know who is involved in
and the universities here in Philly, the universities play a big part in it. Temple and University of Pennsylvania are Eaton. They're just settler colonizing this whole city.
There you go. So you know who's a part of that? Your local politician, your mayor, the governor who approve, these zoning projects. They're the ones that are attached to that, along with, corporations and private equity firms. I just did a talk about the cost of living crisis for 2024. I mean, it's the number of people that just can't afford to make it minimum wage in this country. It's absolutely insane. So this is what I mean about getting involved locally, whether it's mutual aid, whether it's a charity that you can work with, whether it's housing initiatives. That's a big one. People can't afford to rent. People can't afford to buy a house. You have to organize in that way, because Marc is right. At some point, this election will be over. And then what usually happens is people go back to sleep. And what I'm telling you is don't stop organizing after the election is over.
Don't stop organizing after this election is over, I think, is the most important thing. And somebody who's been an activist and organizer most of my life, that's where I spend my time. And I think even as a Green Party member, and this is where I am probably in the minority of the party. I'm much more interested in what we do in between these presidential elections than I am what we do every 4 years. I'm much more interested in getting candidates on school boards and city councils and state houses. I'd love our numbers to triple in terms of elected offices. We should be at 500, closer to 500 in 4 years, or 8 years. I'm excited about what's in front of us, but I think you're right. Our eyes have to stay on the prize, and the prize is not being president right now. I think we could have a Green Party president in 20 years, 30 years. But right now we have to keep fighting and building. And the work you're doing goes a long way, not just for the Green Party, I mean, but just in terms of challenging the corporate structure and helping us fight for a world that is not yet. Last question for you. A week from today, who will be the president-elect?
Oh my gosh. When I did the prediction last night, I predicted Donald Trump would win by 312 electoral votes. That was based on, the polls the other day. However, I saw new polls today. So I'm gonna have to make another prediction when I go live Thursday night, because the new polls are now showing that Kamala Harris is gaining in Michigan and also in the national vote a little bit. So it's tough. I still don't see Kamala Harris getting Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And I think that's really what they're fighting for. Yeah, you're in PA. Do you see her getting Pennsylvania?
I do. Pennsylvania is very gettable. I think it's just going to come down like Bucks County, some things. I think she could get Pennsylvania. Michigan, I just don't see it. Wisconsin is a nail biter, but I don't see it. I'm not optimistic. Michigan, I'd say no. Pennsylvania, I'd say probably. And Wisconsin, I'd say maybe. And I think that's how the election's going to go. I honestly, if I gun to my head right now, looking at the numbers, I would probably say Trump's going to win. But as we've seen in this election, there's so much so many ebbs and flows, so many changes. Kamala Harris is not out of this race by any stretch. She can absolutely win, and she's going to win if her base shows up and shows out. And I think that's possible. And I hope that happens. Anyway. Let's talk. I'm happy to come on your show whenever, but also let's connect again soon, maybe right after the election, because I'd love to talk to you and pick your brain some more.
Sounds good.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on YouTube. My channel is Sabby Sabs, and you can find me on Twitter. My handle is @SabbySabs2. Everybody, follow her, watch her show, support her. She has memberships, join. Independent radical media and progressive media only happen if y'all support it, if we support it. So let's do that. She's one of the best, y'all. Thank you. Good to see you, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye. Bye. All right, y'all. That was Night School. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I had a ball. Thank you for being a part of it. There are a couple people here, not a couple. There are a lot of people who made great donations and super chats, and I want to shout some of them out. Most of you have already had the messages posted, but I'm just going to read them to a few of them. Bullet the Bunny, I'm shouting you out, baby. Ethernet, I want to shout you out. Jeremiah Muhammad gifted 20 memberships. Thank you so much, my brother. You don't know how grateful we are, as always, for your generosity. Jason Wakeman, shout out to you. Jazz LP, Dallas' Finest, thank you so much for being a part of it. And I pretty much asked all of your questions, even if I didn't quote you at the time. But Bill Williamson, thank you. Rob Bowe, thank you. James Harvey said, Mark, I'm wondering what happened to your position on strategically voting against Trump. I don't expect hardly anything from Kamala, but I know what to expect from Trump, and that is a racist. I mean, James, that's where I'm at right now. Is I'm thinking about how to do that best. I've done that in the past with vote trading and strategic balloting. I voted green, but also vote traded. I don't know what I'm going to do this time, but my primary goal is to keep Trump out of the White House. I'm going to do whatever I can to keep Trump out of the White House. I feel you on voting against genocide. I know some of y'all didn't like that we were talking about the blackness stuff for so long, but I'll be honest with you, a lot of people wanted to talk about the blackness stuff for so long. So some of you, that's an unimportant issue to you, and Gaza is important. There are other people who are descendants of slavery who feel like the race and the blackness conversation is important and they don't care about Gaza. I think we should talk about all of it. I think all of it matters. Although obviously I think a genocide is more important than abstract theoretical conversations about racial identity. It's not unimportant. So that's the move. Justin B, shout out to you. Tonya Tamika, shout out to you. I know myself, shout out to you. I'm not ignoring some of these shouts out. If I did it as an accident.
Baby K, shout out to you. Ryan Morrison, I appreciate you. Oh, it's funny. I just talked about boat trading. Oh, you said swap. Same thing. Baby K, thank you again. The orange pillars coming to you. I didn't feel like Savvy was saying giving both sides talk. If anything, I felt like she was pretty strident in not doing that. If anything, I think I was getting critique for that. Anyway, y'all, thank you for watching. Hit the like button, hit the join button, hit the subscribe button. We got a long way to go, y'all. We're building this channel up, but I appreciate all of you. If you can't hit the like, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you can't join, look on Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle, and drop us something. $1 is appreciated. $10 is appreciated. $1 million is appreciated. Actually, it's really appreciated. But if everybody watching right now would have dropped $10 in, if everybody watching right now were to drop a $10 donation on Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle, we would meet all of our financial goals for the month. So consider dropping $10 in tonight and allow us to meet those financial goals. We only got one day left in the month. We really could use your support. Anyway, either way, we'll see you tomorrow. Love you.